In order to assess the usefulness of my sources, I evaluated their origin, the purpose, the value, and the limitation. The first source that I evaluated was source 1, and it was titled Seven Pillars of Wisdom by T.E. Lawrence. The origin of this text was Lawrence's personal account of his experiences in the Arab Revolt. The purpose of him writing it was to explain his motives for helping the Arabs. And the value of I found in this text was it was written by T.E. Lawrence during the same period, and it was a product of his notes from the Paris Peace Conference and his diary from the Arab Revolt. Also, it offered historical insights into how he employed guerrilla warfare in the Arab Revolt. And finally, the limitation of this text is that historians need to be cautious because of his biased tone towards his British superiors. Also, the dates and names he discusses in his introduction that they could be wrong. The second source that I evaluated was titled Principles of War, and it was by Ferdinand Foch, meaning it was primary source. The origin of this source is that Foch's academic credentials include that he served in the French army and he was an instructor at the French War College, which is where the book came from. The purpose of this text is to educate commanders of the essentials or the principles of the science of war. His motives for doing this was to prevent further French casualties. The value of this text was based on Ferdinand Foch's his course curriculum, and it categorizes and evaluates each characteristic of modern warfare, providing me a basis for my investigation. It also offers insights into his war mentality, and it discusses how his mentor is Napoleon. The limitation of this text, though, is that Ferdinand Foch was French, and of course he wrote in French, so this is a translated text, so always with the translated text you have to be careful with errors in translation. The process for determining the efficiency of these two leaders can be categorized as their ability to assess their political, their military, and their social environment, and then how well they applied their war strategy, and finally what the resulting impact was on defeating the Central Powers. First was T.E. Lawrence. T.E. Lawrence's assessment of the political situation was he had to cooperate with both the Arabs and the British, and with the Arabs he had to convince them to unite together. This also plays into the social assessment of the Arabs, is that they were brutal and ruthless to each other because of ancient blood feuds. His assessment of the military situation was that he utilized the Turk-trained Arabs, and he also utilized the Arabs, the nomadic desert Arabs, and together with that combined force, he was able to mobilize massive forces against the Turks. Also, in observing the Arabs, he decided that the most effective battle plan was to blockade or avoid the Turks in order to exhaust the Turkish resources. And he did this mainly by destroying many parts of the Hejaz Railway, which also excited the Arabs because they thirsted for artillery and they envied the modern artillery, even though they couldn't fathom that destructive force. But in the end, Lawrence was successful, and the Arab Revolt was victorious in controlling the Arab lands from Syria to Yemen. But this victory was overshadowed by the Sykes-Picot Agreement. Ferdinand Foch's evaluation of his environment was completely different from Lawrence because he was familiar with this area. He had no evaluations of his enemy because he knew exactly what to expect. There were no geographical obstacles like a desert. He knew exactly what to expect, and that he climbed, with his political environment, he climbed the ladder throughout his military career, and he also made good friends with Clemenceau, which got him good promotions, and he was able to make friends with his commanding officer, Joffre. His military though his military assessment of his military environment was remarkable, and that his ability to assess his military tactics and strategy ultimately won the war, which is why he is revered as for being the mastermind of the miracle of the Marne.
So in conclusion, the two leaders, Foch and Lawrence, fought in very different places and with very different people, but both leaders were successful in accomplishing the aims of each war. Also, they were successful in applying their methods. Foch's ambitious method of modern warfare, he successfully applied it to the Western Front, and then Lawrence's method of guerrilla warfare defeated the Turks. And so the final question really is, how significant was each leader in defeating the Central Powers? Well, first with Lawrence, in order to determine the answer to this question, you have to assess the enemy. And the enemy of the Arab Revolt was the Turkish forces, who were a significant part of the Central Powers, but not as significant as the Germans. Lawrence did assess this Arab situation and advise Arab leaders, but ultimately his actions did not win the war against the Central Powers. The Arab Revolt did wound the Central Powers, and eventually the Ottoman Empire was dissolved, but it was not the ultimate victory. But Foch's battles, on the contrary, were very significant in defeating the Central Powers, and that his battles were the last battles of the war. The enemy on the Western Front was Germany, and Germany was a major power of the Central Powers. And in conclusion, Foch's leadership along the Western Front was more significant than Lawrence's in winning World War I.